Well, it's been a rough several hours across the entire region. Many areas have seen historic and devastating flooding after extremely heavy rains pounded our region. Warnings and emergencies issued one after another.
This didn't even look like a roadway. It looked like this was just a river just going down.
There's going to be more today. I can tell you that for sure. I would say all the counties that's under the flash flood emergency, and there are multiple ones, will likely issue declarations of emergencies.
He said it's coming again, and I said we don't have no way to go unless we walk.
We had thousands without power, nearly 20,000 people without power this morning.
My mom was like, we have to leave. And I was like, what's wrong? And she was like, the water is getting in the garage, we have to leave.
And Buckhorn Elementary School is almost completely underwater at this point.
She's yelling at us, we gotta move the cars, we gotta this, we gotta that, there's water, there's water.
A lot of folks are going to wake up to a devastating scene this morning. This is not even close. I mean, we've still got multiple rounds of rain to go.
Passing through this area, you know, I'm sure people would think, what do they see there? But we see peace and comfort. I can sit on my porch and hear quietness. You know, I mean, in bigger cities, you know, you hear sirens or, you know, stuff.
I always just want to be home. Like when I go away on trips and go to bigger cities, I just always want to come back to Appalachia because it's a whole different setting. It's a whole different vibe. I don't think there's a friendlier place than Appalachia.
This place is heaven on earth to me. We went to Pine Mountain Overlook over the weekend, and I look out and I think, how could anybody not want to be here?
I didn't really expect a flood, and when I look back on things, it rained a whole lot, and sometimes you're just so busy you don't realize. But I remember the water building in my driveway, and I have like a step up to get into the house, and I noticed at one point, like, that water's not usually there. Oh, we're gonna have to use the shovel, that the water shouldn't be there. And you know, I never realized till after the flood, I was like, the water was building up and we all just didn't realize it.
It had been raining a lot. It was about like 2 or 3 in the morning. And I stay up late usually because I like to play video games at late hours. And I heard my mom go through the hallway and it was raining pretty hard. I could hear it hitting the roof and I was like, I wonder if something's going on. So I opened the door and my mom was like, we have to leave. She was like, the water is getting in the garage, we have to leave.
And we decided we were going to try to go out of the holler to see how high the river was getting. You know, we were just curious, being nosy really. And got to the end of our fence and we couldn't get any further because the rocks and all were washed over in the road. So we had to turn around and come back. And within probably 30 minutes of that, it was coming up over the bank behind the house. And then probably another 30 minutes, it was up here on the porch. And then it just started coming in the house. It was so fast.
And I was just so tired. I remember waking up and thinking I had heard a noise, but couldn't tell if I had imagined it. And then the next thing I know, I hear just banging on the door, and my grandpa's answering it. And he's telling me it's my great aunt, and she's yelling at us, we gotta move the cars, we gotta this, we gotta that, there's water, there's water. And I come downstairs and it's just, there's floodwater rushing through. My first thought there was, like, I know water's never been that high. I knew immediately when I saw it, this means people are dead. The water shouldn't be here. The alarm went off on the phone. Well, I got up, I thought, I better look. So I went into the bathroom and the water was already rushing by the window. And I could hear the house popping and cracking. And I hollered at my husband. I said, we've got to get up. We've got to get out.
I think the best way to describe the way that flooding typically happens is the ground is like a sponge. When the ground gets full, just like a sponge, and can't hold anymore, the water only has one place to go, up and out. That's typically what happens during a flood. This, where it had been raining for so long, the ground was already so saturated that the water was standing in places. It was a flash flood on the rivers, and that doesn't happen.
So my parents were like scrambling to open the garage and get our cars out. And I hadn't seen anything yet because I was trying to like grab like valuables, things to me. And the water was like up to about midway up my leg.
And about 1 o'clock in the morning, Rose called me and she said, the water is up, it's flooding up here, the water is about to come on the porch. I woke up from the dead sleep. And I thought they was joking. I said, "Oh, it ain't that high." Then I heard Letitia in the background say, "Tell Dad that the water has washed the garage away and his car has gone down the river." And then I start really waking up then.
We had to get out, so we flipped the power on the breaker box, and we started outside. Well, our door was already, water was up on it, and it took both of us to get the door open. So when we got out, we were going to go to the roof, but my husband has bad knees, so we couldn't. So we had to wait, and the water was probably up to my shoulders.
It was just how unexpected everything was. I don't think anybody expected everything to be so bad so fast. It was like you woke up and it was raining, and then all of a sudden we had to wade water out of our house to get out. And that was just 30 minutes us trying to pick up a few little things to take with us, like a few pictures, but we had to wade to get out.
We went to the garage to get the cars out, and we realized there was a tree in the road. This part of the road was flooded. You couldn't get by. There was a tree right there on that fence, and we couldn't get out. So my dad had to go get a chainsaw and try to cut the tree in half so we could escape. So he got it cut in half, and I was like, me and my mom were trying to grab some stuff and load it in the car. And my dad finally got the tree cut, and he was like, "Okay, we have to go now. There's no more time." We left, and by the time I got in the car, the water was up to my knees.
The garage, it was probably 10 feet up to the top of the garage. It was all the way up to the gutters in the house. And I didn't realize the strength of the water, so I watched cars go down in the driveway toward the creek. There was a 2-story building. Like, it was crazy. My car was floating to the roof of the house. I never really realized that water could do that. And then at one point, my husband and John had to go to help a neighbor. He was stuck in the water, and I was on the porch with everybody's dogs, and the bridge gave.
There wasn't electricity, there wasn't cell service, you could only make emergency calls. I had so many relatives that thought that I was dead because they just seen the news. And of course on the news it was showing the devastation, and they couldn't get a hold of anybody.
We have been told in Perry County they can't get crews out fast enough to rescue people out of homes. There's so many water rescues ongoing right now that they're having to call out neighboring departments for help.
We had the water in the parking lot, which wasn't awful. We had to move our cars because they were in danger of, our personal cars because they were in danger of going under. But when the cell phones and the internet and all communication went out, the last picture I got from Steph was the water basically at the bottom of our porch steps. And I knew we'd have to get a lot higher to get in their house because our house is 5 blocks high. But when you see that, and then the service cuts out, and you're also trying to keep it together because you're scared for your family, but you've got thousands of people who are watching you. Not only here, I found out later they were watching us on Facebook and on the live stream from across the country.
Look at that water just pouring out of there. This is a house on a hill on Highland Avenue, the Turner house here, and look at that. Look at that raging water. And
it's still pouring.
Exactly. It's still pouring up there. So, I mean, it's just, this situation is it's bad. I don't know how else to say it. It's bad.
And we waited in our cars for hours. We couldn't go into Awesome, which was the way out. We couldn't go that way. We couldn't go up the mountain to get into town because it was underwater. So we just had to wait. The cell phone towers went out. There was no electricity. We were just in the dark. The last thing I did before the self-service went out was I texted my best friend and I was like, I don't know if I'm going to get out of this, but I love you. Because I did think that we were going to die. I thought the water would get up on the hill and that we would die. It was just kind of like, by that point it had calmed down a lot, but also we were still kind of like in disbelief. So we were just kind of standing there watching the house and trying to see if the water was going down or not.
Is that my porch? Whose porch is that? It's Mikey's in my backyard.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Look at their garage. What happened? Oh my God, this is so much damage. Are we gonna live like this? No, baby, we don't live here anymore.
It was just still unbelievable. Of course, at this point, it's all over the news. It's everywhere. So there's no denying this. It really happened, you know, because I think the night of the flood, I went to bed thinking, like, did this really happen, you know? And then to wake up the next day and it's still all abuzz. It's like, wow, it started to set in, the realness of it.
Depending on where you are, it was a little bit different, but the official estimate from the Weather Service was 6 to 16 inches. So I know Whitesburg, the Kentucky River, Whitesburg broke its record crest. Jackson broke its record crest. I don't think Hazard did. Who else? Boonville broke their record crest on the Kentucky River.
Water, had washed houses away and all this stuff, and there's a lot of dust and sand in the road. It's just like you said, like a war zone. It was dust and dirt and cars up on porches, and it was just something out of a horror movie, you know. But when I got up in the middle of Neon, I thought this place would never be, it'd never be the same.
I don't think it really sunk in until after I came back a few weeks after the flood. Because in my mind and memory, I know what it looked like before the waters destroyed things. And to be driving down the road, especially going through Jackson, there were trailers just knocked across into other rivers and ridges. Some spots that were empty and you would think nothing had ever been there, but there was a whole house there.
It was a blur, but you still remember things. You remember how tired you were, and you felt like you had to save everything. You didn't have anything, and you wanted to save what you could, and you probably saved things that you probably shouldn't. The smells in the house were so strong, it would take your breath. You had to wear a mask. Sometimes one wasn't enough. Sometimes you had to use two. And when you left that day, you had mud boots on. Your feet were hurting. They were blistered. And you had to take a bath. Probably you had to wash more than 1-2 times to try to get it all off of you. And then you had to start it all over the next day.
To hear how much mud was in the house after the water had left, and knowing that they had to shovel all that out first. Because once I got here, a lot of stuff had been removed, but you could see the floors, the walls, that stuff was still affected. So I saw my dad cutting out drywall, basically from the time he got up to the time he laid down, he was doing something. And they started cutting it out. And then you could see what was behind there. So mold was growing. We didn't know this, but these are all things that we're learning, while it's happening. So yeah, you got to cut out the drywall. You got to go a little bit higher, and then because not only is it the drywall, but the insulation, and then the floors, the subfloors. It was just like, wow, you're basically putting a house back together from scratch, essentially.
It was a heart-wrenching time, but I always go back to the Mr. Rogers quote, and his mom always told him to look for the volunteers and look for the good people, and that's what you see, especially, I can't say what I would see if I was in Fayette County or if I was but I know what I saw being in Letcher County, and it was neighbors, taking care of neighbors.
When people heard about Letcher County being hit the way they were, people come out of the woodworks to help out. The guys would come here and they worked like it was their house. They took extra good care of doing whatever they were doing at the house. And, I'm thinking, if this had been New York, how would the response been? You know what I'm saying? Different places. But in a small town, USA, I believe it was a message, that there's good people.
I was always used to helping everybody. And I remember going up to the LCC, and I was like, let me carry that. And they're like, no, Mona, we're here for you this time. And I was like, but I want to help you. And it was really hard for me because I couldn't help anybody. I couldn't help my in-laws. I couldn't help the person down the road because I had to help myself. And that's the first time I'd had ever been in that situation to where I really physically and mentally couldn't help anybody else.
We could have done something. We were without water for 28 days. We were without electricity. Well, you can't go in and clean a house up when you don't even have water to. So we just used that time because we knew we couldn't do anything up there. We just used that time to try to go out and serve people, and we worked with Mercy Chefs and delivered meals, and we worked with ICANN, and so we just used our time to do other things besides worry about what was going on up there. And
we're survivors, so that's an important thing is that we're like the Timex was. We can take a lick and keep on ticking, And I just thank the Lord for that we're able to, to be a survivor, because you think so many people that.
My complaint, my frustration lies with government. And we're a year out on this thing, and we should be further along than what we are.
Everybody's like, okay, a year has passed, the flood is over. It's not over because everything is still in ruin. There's flood debris everywhere, and I feel like if there was another heavy rain here, we are not prepared for it, and we are at greater risk of losing more lives if another flood comes. There was a housing crisis before, now it's even bigger. So I think there was a lot of help at the start, but not now. And I think we need more help now than we ever did.
County-wise, we have so many bridges and roads that got just blown away, basically. And if they weren't, they've got these giant holes or dips in them. I remember a volunteer saying, we're not actually ever going to be able to recover all of those. So it's going to be years or decades out, we're still going to feel the impact of this. And I think that's the part that people don't understand or see unless they're here or have somebody that lives here.
So now what happens? Who rebuilds? Who comes back? Does it just turn into a ghost town? That's a situation I think you have to look at. But again, these communities that were already in bad shape before the flood, what are they going to do now? Because it's changed literally the landscape of their town.
When you send people in here, or when you let people make decisions for this area who are not familiar with this area, you get what we got. FEMA told us that you either take this or you don't. This is the plan that we have for you all. And our county judge expressed his concern and said, these are not going to hold up, but they said this is what you got.
They didn't know how to navigate around mountains and stuff, I don't think. So a lot of what they put in place kind of failed and is still failing. It was like a temporary fix, not a permanent one. So I think we need more permanent solutions, and we need funds to put those in. It has never flooded here like it has that day. And it just seems like the environment around here is changing a lot. Like, as I've grown up, I've noticed it's gotten more intense, and we've had more weather-related disasters. So I think it does have a lot to do with climate change.
Yeah, just last weekend we had a lot of storms, so even yesterday it rained some. So when it rains, you get that anxious feeling that it's going to happen again, even though they're not giving it. You still have that in the back of your mind because you didn't think it was going to hit the last time. So, the storms scare you, the water scares you. I've got animals in the house. They still feel it too.
I always get scared. Every time it rains a lot, I look out the window and I'm like, is it going to get in the yard again? Is it going to happen again? I just feel like it's going to happen again, and nothing can really reassure me about that. So.
When it starts to pour the rain and it doesn't stop after a while, I get so antsy. It used to be before this, I was staying up really late at night and I couldn't figure out why can't I go to sleep. And it's because I started checking the time. I wouldn't go to sleep until around 4 or 5 a.m. When my aunt came banging on the door, it was 3 a.m. So it's like a part of me was still expecting it to just all go wrong again. And the realization that I could have died in my sleep. There were people who did. I told my family the biggest impact that the flood has had for me is just the thought that I don't think I can stay here. And my thing has always been, I want to come home. I want to do work that gives back to the community and the people that I grew up with and that helped me. But I can't live through that again. And the reality is, it's not if, it's when.
Infrastructurally, it's just the power of water, I think, does more than any other natural disaster. I really do. To answer your second question, as much as I would like to say I don't think this will happen again in a lifetime, it may well. It may well. I have been doing this job long enough where I don't ever, especially when it comes to flooding, I don't ever count anything out.
It's easy to be like, oh wow, it's devastating, just move, you need to move somewhere else. But it's like, think about being rooted and grounded in a place, and then overnight, just like that, everything changes. The comfort that we have of being in this community where we know our neighbors, they know who we are, we look out for one another.
It's home. It's home. When I do get to come back to Neon or McRoberts, I see the people I know. It's just like a reunion for me. I'm like, oh my goodness, I've not seen you in so long. It's just, I'm glad I didn't have to move away like most people did, because it's like moving away from your family and not seeing your siblings. And Neon it's a place. It's been flooded. We look really bad on the outside, but when you look on the inside, it's a big old heart. And everybody's full of love. You know, strangers will come in, but they just don't realize what it's really about.